Hello, good afternoon again. We're here for our second session. As I mentioned earlier, we had a list of participants for this session. But in the Philippines right now, there is a maintenance of all internet providers. So I just like to welcome despite that, we have two participants. Thank you so much for coming. We have Natalia Tan. Natalia, thank you. Maybe you'd like to introduce yourself, say something about yourself.
Hi, hello, I'm Natalia Tan, and I was working student.
Okay. And then we have Cheryl Wang. Cheryl, thank you
Hi.
for coming.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Wang. I'm a child psychologist.
Okay, great. So thank you. We are now in our second topic, which is how to control stock. Okay. So this topic is important for anyone who has a business. So may I ask both our participants, if that's the topic, what kind of expectation do you have in terms of at the end of our short session? What would be the key takeaways, or what would you want to happen? Maybe we can start with Sheriff.
I'd like to learn how to cut costs because I handle my own clinic.
Oh, okay, great. How about you, Natalia?
If I were to do business in the future, I would like to learn how to maximize the revenue.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, no, this assumes, of course, you have some sort of store, physical store, which eventually I think most of us will want to get into detail. So I'd like to start off by giving you some sort of questionnaire. Okay, it's from Psychology Today. It asks, um, "Are you a control freak?" Okay, because stock control is part of management called management control. Okay, so here is the um, site. Okay, so I won't read the intro. It's just to give credit to this person, Carl Albrecht. But here, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. Okay, and at the end, there is a ranking if you are a control freak. Okay, so be honest as you can as you answer each question. Imagine that someone who knows you well is looking over your shoulder. What would they say? Would they agree with your self-perception? So I'm just going to read the answers, and then at the end, we're going to have a tabulation. So number one, do you help other people drive? Tell them what route to take, when to turn, where to park. Remind them that the traffic light has changed. I know you have a piece of paper there. You can write maybe yes or no. Number two, do you devote a lot of attention and energy to keeping your personal environment organized? Yes or no? Number three, do you give people a lot of shoulds and oughts, unsolicited advice, suggestions, and constructive criticism? Fourth, do you have a lot of personal rules, routines, rituals, and ceremonies? And number five, are you the one who takes over and orders around other people when the situation seems confused or bemuddled? Number six, do you dislike depending on others, accepting help from them, or allowing them to do things for you? Seven, do you insist on being right, having things done your way, or having the final word? Yes or no? Number eight, do you overplan very simple activities? Nine, do you find it difficult to admit mistakes, being wrong or misinformed, or acknowledging that you've changed your mind? And last, number 10, do you become angry, irritable, or anxious when someone or something makes you late, when things don't start on time, and when things don't go according to plan? Okay, so I think if you score a yes, that's a 5. And if you score a no, that's a 1. Okay, so maybe you can add your scores. A yes is a 5, a 1 is what you get when you answered no. So do you have a tabulation? Let's start with you, Natalia. What's your
Oh,
score?
I'm still dumb.
Oh, sorry. How about you, Cheryl? Do you have a tabulation?
I'm 26.
Wow, 26. Okay. So you can live and let live. Okay. Next, Natalia, what did you get? It's okay. What you get?
22.
Oh, okay. So you can live and let live too. So you guys are not control freaks. So that's, well, I guess in some ways good news. Okay. So this activity that we have, it's just really to engage you guys, to introduce the concept of control. Control is very important in management. I'd like to ask you two questions for each of you, and maybe you can help me out just to emphasize how important control is. So, um, in the Philippines, we have this famous story of a company that its drivers would use the vans during company time, okay, without authorization. So what the owners did is they put cameras inside the vehicles so that they could track why the driver or where the driver is. Now, after 1 month, the drivers or the vans, the cameras were broken. They were not broken by the driver. Something else destroyed them. Could somebody guess what thing or creature destroyed the video cameras inside the vans? Natalia, do you have an answer?
Ants.
Very good. Ants, yes. Because what the drivers did is they put sugar along the cords. So ants would eat it, and so they could not be found. Very good. Okay, there's a second famous control measure that you see all over the world. Not in all restaurants, but in some. And my question, the second question is, why is it that when you go to a restaurant, there is a small sign? I see this in Starbucks. It says, if you don't get a receipt, your drink or your meal is free. What does that mean? And what is the implication with control? Cheryl? Oh, yeah, okay, good. Cheryl, what's your answer?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty strategic way of um, asking the customers to do quality control, like um,
Yeah.
or cost control, because if there is no receipt, there's no way of tracking the transaction. So
Yes, yes, that's correct.
perhaps it's an innovative way, and it's also like a cooperative way. You allow your customers to help you in
Yes.
tracking the transaction.
Very good, no? So yeah, as Cheryl is saying, what that means is that the owner has asked the customer to help him or uh, him or her out, right? By asking the customer to do and be involved in the control process, um, because they don't trust the cashier 100%. Okay, so thank you. Those are examples of control. So now we're going to talk about stock control. And to do that, I'm going to share this video that will talk a little about the major concepts behind managing control. Okay, so let's listen in.
Hi there. In this business topic video, we're going to introduce the concept of stocks. We also introduce the idea of stock management. Of course, stocks are the raw materials, the work in progress, and the finished products, the finished goods that either enable production to be scheduled and operated, or, for example, to enable a retailer to meet customer demand. Most businesses operate with stocks of one form or another. Just a word of warning, you may also see the word inventories used for stocks. They mean exactly the same thing. Stocks are inventories. There are three main types of stock in a business. There are the raw materials and components that go into the production process. For example, it could be components that are assembled into an electronic device. It could be the raw materials that go into a manufacturing process. When those production processes are underway, we have what's known as work in progress. In other words, non-finished or unfinished stock. A good example of this would be construction, a housing estate, a new housing estate being built. That's work in progress. A road being laid and built, that's work in progress. But similarly, items that are going along a production line until they finally get packaged up, those two are work in progress. And then at the end of the production or the value chain, we have finished goods, goods that are ready to sell. So to summarize, three main types of stock: raw materials and components, work in progress, and finished goods. Now, why does a business hold stock? There are a number of reasons why a business will want to make sure it holds stock. Firstly, as we've already mentioned, for raw materials and components, of course, you need these to enable production to take place. And similarly, a retailer or a wholesaler needs stock in order to be able to sell to customers, to be able to satisfy customer demand. But also, stocks are quite important to allow some protection for the business. For example, to enable the business to meet a sudden or short-term unexpected increase in demand. Maybe to enable the business to handle seasonal changes in demand. And also to enable production to be scheduled efficiently, to make sure there's enough raw materials and components for the production lines to run without running out of raw materials. There's also a concept called buffer, the need for stock to ensure that you don't run out, you don't have a stock out, or that there's a delay in production processes. Lots of reasons why a business needs to hold stock. But of course, it doesn't want to hold too much stock. Key influences, therefore, on how much stock a business held or holds. You can categorize them in three main ways. Firstly, the amount of stock you hold will be related to the need to satisfy demand. A business that doesn't have stock but has customers wanting to buy is in danger of losing those sales and losing the customer relationship. A business also needs to be careful how it manages its working capital. Don't forget, if you're holding lots of stock, that's cash that's invested in that stock, cash that could be used elsewhere. So another key influence on the amount of stock is the extent to which you need to manage the amount of capital that's tied up in inventories and stocks. And thirdly, another influence is the risk of those stocks losing value whilst you hold them. In general, the longer that you hold stocks, the greater is the risk that they may not be able to be used or that they can be sold for their full value. So, as you consider how much stock to hold and as you consider ways in which you can manage stock, and we'll take a look at stock control charts and processes in a separate video, you need to think about the cost of holding stocks. And of course, it's not just the cost of buying the stock in the first place. You need to pay for the storage. So the cost of storage would include things like warehousing, but also the employees and the equipment and the facilities to be able to manage and handle those stocks. There is a cost associated with interest or finance because you've tied up capital in buying the stocks. So the interest cost could be fairly significant. There's also a risk, as we've mentioned, that the longer the stocks are held, the greater is that they may not be able to be used. They become obsolete. So for example, a retailer with stocks that have perhaps passed their sell-by date or a product that's gone out of fashion has a higher degree of obsolescence risk. And also there's a cost of not holding stocks, the stock out cost. If a customer comes into the shop, you've not got the stock or the product that they want to buy, then you've lost the sale unless you can find a way of getting the product to them. So you need to think about the stock out costs as well as the costs of holding stock. That's been a brief introduction to the concept of stocks and stock management.
Need a professional website? I created one for our startup using Wix. Let me show you how I did it. First, go to wix.com. Our startup is constantly evolving, and we need a website that can do the same. We use Wix Video to showcase product demos.
Sorry about that. Yeah, okay, so you got it. He talked about stock and certain concepts that revolve around it. I'd like to just focus a little on two before I summarize our discussion. One is he talked about obsolescence. And I'd just like to ask you, offhand, I know, what do you think are products that they lose their value as time goes on the shelf? Can you name me a product, Cheryl or Natalia, that how much it was last month versus how much it is today, or maybe more dramatic, 6 months ago, the value goes down just by sitting on the shelf? Can you give me an example of a product like that?
Those that expire easily,
Okay, very good. Yeah,
dairy products.
yeah, yes. Yeah. Also products that spoil, yeah. Also computers, you know, because the dynamics of technology is that people are always looking for something better, or maybe companies are always making something more powerful, faster. So when it sits on the shelf, it loses value. So the control and management of this is important. Another thing, actually the main thing also that the video, I think, said, but could have expounded more, it's a good video, was that we have to keep in mind that when we talk about stocks, stocks are actually cash. Okay? So when you go to a supermarket and you see all those different products, those are all cash. They just have changed form. Okay? So what we want as a business is we want to convert cash back into cash as quickly as possible and as often as possible. When we buy stock, our cash is converted into something that still has to be sold. So the faster it is sold, the better it is for a company. If it is sold at a better price, then our company can make more money. Okay? So these are some of the concepts we have. That's why stock control is very important. The management of it, how to make sure stocks are moving, how to make sure there are no stock outs. These are important concepts for entrepreneurship, for people who manage these type of businesses. So with that, thank you, Natalia and Sheryl, for taking the time out to listen to our little lecture on stock control. And hopefully you learned a little about yourself and a little about the concepts behind it. So thank you. Thank you for coming.